Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It's a Wednesday, so it's time for another weekly Top 10 Countdown. Before I tell you what this week's Top 10 Countdown is going to be, let me say I've got a shout out coming up at the end of the video, so please stay tuned for that. But I was a little bit undecided on what Top 10 I was going to do this week because honestly, I had 4 or 5 different ones in mind, and I couldn't decide on which one I was going to do until Monday, because we have discussed wrestling a couple of times here on the channel already this week. So I decided on Monday that I was going to make this week's Top 10 Countdown about wrestling. And this one should be fun because a lot of names on this list, most people are not going to recognize unless you're a hardcore wrestling fan. But a few months back, I would say probably sometime during the summer, I did a top 10 countdown about wrestling, but it was the top 10 best all-time big men, but that was based on big men that could actually wrestle. This week's top 10 countdown has absolutely nothing to do with in-ring ability. This is the top 10 countdown that's strictly about weight. Your height does not matter. The last top 10 countdown I did talking about big men, it could either be about your height or your weight. This one has nothing to do with height and nothing to do with in-ring skills. It's wrestling's all-time top 10 heaviest wrestlers. And if you know any of these wrestlers, please feel free to let me know in the comment section. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. It's wrestling's top 10 all-time heaviest wrestlers. Number 10 on the list was Akibono Taro, who weighed 514 pounds. He was a Japanese-American wrestler. And if the name Akibono sounds familiar, that is because Akibono, after he pretty much retired with his in-ring days as far as wrestling, he challenged the Big Show to a sumo wrestling match back in the day. So if the name Akibono sounds familiar, that is why. Number 9 is Andre the Giant, and I don't have to give any backstory on him. Everybody knows who that is. He weighed 525 pounds. Number 8 on the list is Man Mountain Mike. And Man Mountain Mike weighed a total of exactly 600 pounds. Number 7 on the list is Blimp Levy, who weighed 642 pounds. And he was actually a wrestler back in the 1930s and 1940s. Is how long ago he wrestled. And he was actually a fat man at a sideshow at Coney Island, and he was spotted by somebody who was in the wrestling business, and that's how he got his start. Number 6 is Haystacks Calhoun, who weighed 658 pounds. Before we get into the top 5, let's go ahead and recap 10 through 6 on top 10 all-time heaviest wrestlers. Number 10 was Akibono at 514 pounds. Number 9, Andre the Giant, 525 pounds. Number 8, Man Mountain Mike, 600 pounds. Number 7, Blimp Levy at 642 pounds. And number 6 was Haystacks Calhoun at 658 pounds. Number 5 on the list is another Haystacks. His name was Giant Haystacks, and he had a couple of other names before he became Giant Haystacks, but he was actually a little bit bigger than Haystacks Calhoun, and a lot of people thought they looked similar, so that's how he got the name Giant Haystacks, and he weighed 686 pounds. Number 4 on the list was Yokozuna, and everybody knows who Yokozuna was. He weighed 750 pounds at his heaviest. He was slightly over 600 when he got his start. And when he got his start, he was dominant. And we're talking about 30 years ago in what was then the WWF. And back in those days, he was really, truly about the only bad guy that really carried the championship for a long period of time. Back in those days, it was pretty much dominated by the good guys because promoters thought that good guys is what brought in the money. And Yokozuna is really the first bad guy that had a long run as champion and probably could have lasted longer than he did, but his health just got so bad they finally had to release him because he just couldn't do anything. He got so big, and unfortunately that's what caused his death at the age of 34 years old, I believe. Number 3 on the list and number 2 on the list were actually brothers, and they actually to this day still hold the record for the world's heaviest tag team. They were the Mcguire Brothers. Number 3 was Billy, and number 2 was Benny. Billy weighed 784 pounds, and Benny weighed 814 pounds. So combined, they were almost 1,600 pounds. And my wife was actually entertained a couple of years ago when I showed her a picture of them because she had never heard of them because it was so long ago. And I found a picture on the internet of them sitting on a motorcycle, and they were so big you could barely even see the motorcycle. But they were actually stabbed by a fan, and somebody actually put rattlesnakes in their locker room. A fan found out what locker room was theirs and went and put rattlesnakes in their locker room. So stories like that I always find amusing because it amazes me how so many people talk about wrestling being fake, but yet they get so mad about what somebody does or says in a wrestling ring. And the Mcguire brothers were one of the first who actually have stories of things that happened because of fans, because of what they were doing in the ring. And number 1 on the list was a man whose real name was William Cobb, and he was actually born in Georgia, and he died in Georgia. His ring name was Happy Humphrey, and when he started wrestling, he weighed, I would say, between 650 and 700 pounds, but by the time he retired, he weighed about 900 pounds, and he had to retire at an early age because his weight got so out of control. And there are stories that say when he sat down to eat, he could actually eat 15 whole chickens at one time, not to mention the other stuff he was eating. And he was actually one of the first people on record to have gastric bypass surgery, and they actually removed over 100 pounds of fat from him. And then he later went into a rehab program to lose weight, and he still holds the record for the most weight ever lost. And I believe, if memory serves, when he entered the program, he weighed, I think, 804 pounds, and when he came out, he weighed 232 pounds. So he had about 570 pounds that he lost altogether in that program. They put him on 3 different strict diets. And when he came out, he weighed 232, and he was actually in good enough shape and young enough to get back in the wrestling business. But he decided he wasn't going to. He was going to stay out of it and just enjoy the glory days of being Happy Humphrey. But unfortunately, he put the majority of the weight back on and got back over 800 pounds and died of a heart attack at 62 years old in Augusta, Georgia in 1989. And 62 years for somebody that big is actually a long life, because normally when you're that big, you don't live near that long. But number 1 on the list was William Cobb, whose ring name was Happy Humphrey. He was born in Georgia, and he died in Georgia, and he was 900 pounds by the time his in-ring days were over, and they were only over because of his size. Any thoughts on the countdown? Please feel free to let me know. As I said, this had nothing to do with microphone skills, nothing to do with in-ring skills, nothing to do with how tall you were. It was all based on how much you weighed. Top 10 all-time heaviest wrestlers. My shout out today goes out to my man Mike, who lives all the way up north in the big city of New York City, or as they say on TV, New York City. He actually subscribed to the channel yesterday, and I told him that I would give him a shout out in today's video, and it was going to be about wrestling. I just didn't tell him what it was going to be about with the wrestling. But Mike, thank you so much for subscribing, and if you do so choose to comment on any video at any time, you will now be eligible for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway whenever we get to 1,000 subscribers. And if you have not scrolled through the channel far enough yet and long enough yet to see that I am actually a referee myself, it's because I've been out due to an injury, so it's been a while since I've posted anything on there as far as me being at a show or me being in a ring. But we do discuss wrestling here on the channel. It's the third time this week, but generally we talk about it 1 or 2 days a week because I love wrestling. So thank you again so much for subscribing. Give the video a thumbs up, tell your friends, and tell your family, and help the channel continue to grow. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I can't believe someone broke into my home and stole all my fruit. I am peachless. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.